Uncolonized nations in world history. Colonialism was a defining force from the 15th to the 20th century, with European powers extending their control over vast territories in Africa, Asia, and the Americas. However, a few nations successfully avoided colonization, maintaining their sovereignty throughout this era. These uncolonized countries managed to resist through military strength, diplomacy, geographic advantages, and strategic modernization. This article explores some of the most notable examples. 1. Japan. Japan is one of the most prominent examples of a non-colonized nation. During the 19th century, when Western powers were aggressively expanding their empires, Japan was able to maintain its independence. Initially isolated from the world under the Tokugawa shogunate, Japan was forced to open up by the U.S. in 1853. However, instead of succumbing to colonization, Japan embarked on a rapid modernization campaign known as the Meiji Restoration 1868 by adopting Western technology, reorganizing its military, and industrializing. Japan soon became an imperial power itself, defeating China in 1895 and Russia in 1905. Its proactive modernization allowed it not only to resist colonization, but also to become a colonizer. 2. Thailand. Siam. Thailand is the only Southeast Asian country that was never colonized by a European power. Surrounded by British-controlled Burma and French Indochina, Thailand found itself in a precarious position during the 19th century. Its kings, especially King Mongkut Rama IV and King Chulalongkorn Rama V, skillfully negotiated with colonial powers, making strategic concessions that kept the nation intact. These rulers implemented reforms in the legal, educational, and administrative sectors to modernize the state and reduce Western pretexts for colonization. Thailand also benefited from being a buffer state between British and French interests, which helped preserve its sovereignty. 3. Ethiopia. Ethiopia is one of the most significant African nations to have resisted colonization. It maintained its independence during the scramble for Africa. Unlike most of the continent, the most famous example of Ethiopian resistance occurred in 1896 when Emperor Menelik defeated the Italian army at the Battle of Adwa. This decisive victory stunned Europe and became a symbol of African resistance to imperialism, although Italy occupied Ethiopia briefly from 1936 to 1941 under Mussolini. This was during the fascist era and is considered an occupation, not full colonization. Ethiopia's long-standing Christian monarchy, centralized authority, and for Liberia is unique in African history because it was founded by freed African American slaves through the American Colonization Society in 1822. The country declared independence in 1847. Though it had a close relationship with the United States, Liberia maintained its sovereignty through most of the colonial period, while it faced internal struggles and pressures from European neighbors. It was never officially colonized. Liberia's political and cultural institutions were heavily influenced by the United States, but its legal independence was recognized internationally. 5. Nepal. Nepal, the Himalayan kingdom, was never colonized by any European power. The British did attempt to expand into Nepal in the early 19th century, which led to the Anglo-Nepalese War, 1814 to 1816. Though Nepal lost some territory and had to sign the Shagoli Treaty. It retained its internal sovereignty. The British respected Nepal's military prowess, especially the fighting skills of the Gurkhas, whom they later recruited into their own army. Nepal's mountainous geography, strong monarchy, and military tradition helped protect it from colonization. 6. Bhutan. Bhutan, a small Himalayan kingdom, maintained its independence throughout the colonial period, partly due to its isolation and strategic diplomacy, though it signed treaties with the British in the 19th century that gave Britain control over its foreign affairs. Bhutan retained internal autonomy. It avoided direct occupation by limiting contact with the outside world and later established friendly relations with India. After its independence, Bhutan's geographical isolation, small population, and conservative policies helped preserve its sovereignty. 7. Iran-Persia. Iran was never formally colonized, though it experienced significant foreign influence and intervention. During the 19th and early 20th centuries, Iran was caught in the great game between Britain and Russia. Both powers exerted economic and military influence in different parts of the country, establishing spheres of influence. However, Iran retained its political independence and continued to function under its monarchy. It signed treaties, granted concessions, and at times was manipulated by foreign powers, but it was never colonized outright like many of its neighbors. Why these countries resisted colonization. Several key factors helped these countries resist colonization. Geographic advantage. Mountainous terrain, like in Nepal and Bhutan, made military conquest difficult. Strategic diplomacy. Leaders negotiated smartly with colonial powers, offering trade and treaties in exchange for sovereignty. Military strength. Some nations had formidable armies, for example, Ethiopia, Japan, that could repel foreign invasions. Modernization and reform. Nations like Japan and Thailand proactively reform their governments and militaries to match Western powers. Buffer states. Some were used as neutral zones between rival empires, reducing the incentive for direct colonization. Conclusion. Though the tide of imperialism swept across much of the globe, a few nations stood firm, preserving their independence through a mix of resilience, diplomacy, and strategic modernization. Their stories are powerful reminders that even in an age of empires, sovereignty could be defended. Today, these countries stand as symbols of national pride and historical endurance, having written a unique chapter in world history. Thanks for tuning in today. If you've enjoyed this dive into history, don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe for more stories about the people who shaped our world. Until next time, keep questioning and stay curious.